General Shran stood in the center of the war room, his eyes fixed on the holographic map of the battlefield. His mind, usually sharp with the tactics of combat and the strategies of war, was unusually distracted. His elite squad of hunter cubs, predators bred for battle and supremacy, was acting strangely. They had gathered in the training area, and instead of executing their usual brutal drills, they were grooming themselves. Lieutenant Cal, report, Shran growled, his voice low but laced with authority. Lieutenant Mariscal looked uncomfortable, but he did his best to hold his ground. Sir, the cubs, they refused to participate in combat drills. They're requesting grooming sessions. Specifically, they're asking for hair care, fur maintenance, and... He paused, as if weighing how to finish the sentence without sounding absurd. And braiding, sir. A stunned silence swept over the room. Shran's eyes narrowed. The cubs, bred and trained for 12 generations to be the fiercest predators in the quadrant, were now turning to grooming tools instead of their weapons. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, the primal anger of a warrior faced with an unimaginable betrayal of his training. What are they doing? Shran demanded, his voice rising. They're grooming themselves, sir, and they're asking for help with their battle manes. Some of them have even braided their fur. Shran could barely comprehend what he was hearing. Grooming. The apex predators of the galaxy were playing with their fur like pets. Where is the human? Shran's voice was a growl. She's on Sector 9, sir, teaching advanced grooming techniques, Cal responded, his voice almost apologetic. Get her here now. Moments later, Lieutenant Raya Spence, the human responsible for the grooming program, walked into the room carrying a bag of odd-looking tools. She was shorter than the average cub, with a casual grace that seemed out of place in the war room. Shran's eyes swept over her. No weapons, no armor, just the strange implements she'd been using to teach the cubs to groom themselves. Hello, General. I'm Raya, she said, with a smile that seemed far too calm for the situation at hand. Sorry if the cubs are causing a little disruption. They just wanted help with their fur care. Shran's claws dug into the metal surface of the podium. You have turned the fiercest warriors into, what? A pack of pampered pets. Raya looked unbothered, pulling out a brush from her bag. Actually, General, grooming is about more than just appearances. It's about comfort, trust, and health. When you take care of yourself, you perform better. Shran clenched his jaw. They're warriors, not humans. Raya shrugged. Warriors need to feel good, General. If you want them to fight well, they need to be comfortable in their own bodies. Grooming helps with that. Comfort, Shran scoffed. We are predators. Discomfort builds strength. Raya smiled gently. Actually, discomfort builds stress, and stress reduces combat effectiveness. Trust me, you can't fight well when you're uncomfortable. Look at them. When they started grooming, they became more focused, more cooperative. They're more effective together. Shran's mind raced. How could this be happening? The cubs, known for their viciousness and independent nature, were now relying on each other, helping each other, with something as trivial as grooming. Was it possible this human's bizarre methods had somehow worked? Raya didn't stop there. Here, let me show you, she said, walking over to one of the cubs and gently brushing through its fur. The cub's eyes fluttered in relaxation, its body posture straightening as if a weight had been lifted. They trust each other now, Raya continued. They're learning teamwork, communication, and empathy. Not just combat. Grooming creates bonds. Bonds make them stronger. Shran watched in disbelief as more cubs gathered around Raya, eagerly following her every movement. They were focused, their previous chaotic energy now channeled into the act of grooming each other. He pulled up the training data, and his heart sank. The numbers didn't lie. Cohesion, coordination, response time. They were all improving dramatically. This isn't possible, Shran murmured, scrolling through the data again. This can't be real. Grooming, it's made them better. Raya nodded. It's the psychology of self-care. When you care for yourself, you're more confident. When you care for each other, you create trust. That's how real warriors operate. They don't fight alone. They fight as a team. Shran's claws flexed, and he glanced at his command staff. Every officer in the room looked as confused as he felt. We've trained these cubs for generations to be fierce, independent warriors, he muttered. But now they're asking for grooming lessons. Yes, they are, Raya replied, unfazed. And if you let them continue, they'll be stronger for it. Later that day, Shran walked through the training bay, his mind reeling. What he saw both terrified and astounded him. The cubs, once fierce individualists, now worked together with precision. Every move, every strike was coordinated. Their fur was immaculate, their patterns sleek and battle-ready. But then came the reports. General, Lieutenant Cal said, his voice trembling, the adult warriors are requesting grooming sessions too. They want to know how the cubs improved. They're asking for grooming lessons. Shran's heart sank. Now the adults. It's spreading, Cal continued. We've received requests from several other battalions. They've seen the improvements in the cubs, and they want to replicate it. Is this some kind of joke? Shran muttered, his gaze falling on his own reflection in a polished surface. His fur, unkempt and wild, suddenly looked like a liability. Was he starting to care about this? No joke, sir, Cal said, his voice somber. It's a revolution. Within weeks, it wasn't just Shran's battalion. Word of the humans' grooming techniques had spread across the fleet. Other species, battle-hardened warriors who had never known anything but combat, were now requesting grooming sessions. Shran received messages daily, requests from fleets, from other star systems, diplomats, military leaders. Everyone wanted in on the secret. The data was undeniable. Grooming wasn't just a cosmetic improvement. It was creating stronger, more cohesive units. But then came the real shock. Admiral Zyros, a longtime adversary of Shran's fleet, sent a personal message. I've seen the results from your fleet, he said, his voice cold and calculating. And I want in. I want to know how your cubs are suddenly outperforming my elite units. Is it grooming? If so, we want the human. Now. Shocked, Shran turned to Raya. What have we done? We've done something no one else has, Raya replied, her eyes shining with quiet pride. We've shown them that taking care of themselves isn't weakness, it's strength. As the requests continued to flood in, Shran realized that something deeper was happening. The grooming wasn't just improving performance, it was transforming the very nature of combat. Warriors who had once valued strength over everything now valued cohesion. They had abandoned their individualism, realizing that true strength came from working together. The cultural shift was undeniable. General, Cal said one evening, the fleet has requested a full integration of grooming into all units. They want grooming protocols to become standard. They're considering making it part of basic training. Shran ran a hand through his fur, which was now well kept, even though he had never cared about such things. What happened to me? We've become a laughingstock, Shran muttered. And yet it works. The data doesn't lie. Raya entered the room grinning. And now you have a revolution on your hands. It's not just about grooming. It's about embracing change, about finding strength in something you never thought possible. Months later, the results were undeniable. Shran's fleet, once feared across the galaxy for its viciousness, was now admired for its cohesion and effectiveness. Other species began adopting similar grooming programs. Diplomats visited, military leaders sought advice, and even former enemies asked to join. On the training floor, cubs and adult warriors trained together, each helping the other maintain their fur while perfecting their combat techniques. And, as they trained, they shared laughter, trust, and strength. They had become a unified force, through a human with a simple brush. As General Shran stood in his office, reviewing the final reports, he knew one thing for certain. The future of warfare had changed. The galaxy was no longer concerned with individual glory. It was now about unit glory. The predators had become something greater. The sound of Raya's voice echoed down the hall. General, I've got a new batch of cubs to teach. They're asking about braids again. I thought I'd show them some new techniques. Shran chuckled softly to himself. Show them everything, Raya, he said, his voice filled with unexpected warmth. Show them everything.